All right, try to control yourself, people. One of the ugliest spectacles of this week was actually not the impeachment trial, not even the death of Mr. Peanut, but the spectacle of world leaders at Davos sitting passively while they were lectured by now 17-year-old Greta Thunberg. Here's a brief taste.
1 year ago, I came to Davos and told you that our house is on fire. I said I wanted you to panic. I've been warned that telling people to panic about the climate crisis is a very dangerous thing to do. But don't worry, it's fine. Trust me, I've done this before, and I can assure you it doesn't lead to anything.
Whoever heard of a sarcastic 17-year-old? Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin is under fire today for teasing Greta because she called for an end to the fossil fuel economy, which is the economy, and without which there is no economy. Indeed, there's no modernity at all. Mnuchin had the unmitigated gall to say, after she goes and studies economics in college, she can come back and explain that to us. Oh, the horror, the horror. How dare Mnuchin call an ignorant child an ignorant child? To be clear, it's not young Greta's fault that she thinks she has something to say or some high moral ground from which to say it. People keep telling her that she does, and it's deprived her of what little realism and self-awareness a 17-year-old girl can have. She's the opposite of Socrates, who was wise because he knew nothing. Greta has been rendered ignorant of the fact that she's ignorant. The same is true of the Bernie Sanders organizers who were caught on tape by Project Veritas declaring that the Soviet gulags weren't so bad after all. In fact, the same is true of all Bernie's young followers. They weren't born ignorant. Adults made them ignorant, not only by teaching them lies about the past, but by starving them of the great heritage of Western thought that makes socialist Bernie look like the buffoon he is. For a little non-ignorance, here's Jamie Dimon, the billionaire CEO of J.P. Morgan Chase.
I'm not a socialist. I think capitalism is the greatest thing that ever happened to mankind. I think people who haven't read the history books about socialism really should. I think we ought to educate our younger kids. Freedom and free enterprise are inextricably linked. They are not different. I mean, you can't tell people where you can work or how you're going to work or where you're going to. Free enterprise was the pursuit of happiness. And, once you have governments taking control of businesses, it ends up in corruption in Venezuela and it erodes over time because companies get used for political purposes, not to give you great products and services.
Experience, age, wisdom, those are the guys you want to listen to. See, IQs rise year by year, but cultural ignorance is spreading like wildfire. I think with real sadness about the education of great writers like Harriet Beecher Stowe, who wrote Uncle Tom's Cabin. She discovered literature by finding pages from the Arabian Nights and Pilgrim's Progress hidden in her father's attic. Wordsworth memorized John Milton's Paradise Lost as a boy, and Coleridge read Robinson Crusoe. How many of our kids could read those books, even if they would read those books? Ignorance about our culture is ignorance about where we came from. It's ignorance about why we think the things we think. And ultimately, it's ignorance about who we are. And this spreading ignorance is not an accident. A generation unable to accept the failure of their Soviet communist dream, we'll call them the Bernie generation, took over our school systems and not only taught our children lies, but shielded them from the long, hard search for truth that is the West's great heritage. They used to call it the Great Conversation, and they're still shielding them from that information right this minute. Every single thought our children think is shaped by the Bible, but they've never studied the Bible. Their language comes from Shakespeare, but they don't really know Shakespeare. And when they do read these things, their teachers hide the meaning beneath a blanket of feminist theory or race theory or Marxist theory intended to silence the voice of the authors and replace them with the voices of the failed Bernieites. Then, when these children passionately regurgitate the leftist lies they've been taught like Greta does, the left celebrates them as if they're wise future leaders, when really they're just puppets of an educational system run by fools and failures with the express purpose of creating more failure and more fools. When you see the devoisie kowtowing to an adolescent, when you see adolescents cheering an 80-year-old communist buffoon, when you see parents sending their children into the maw of this terrible disinformation machine, it's easy to despair. But that's just the wrong reaction, because you're not helpless in this. You can educate yourself, you can educate your children. It is never too late to start the world again. Everything is tickety-boo, including the massive growth of the Daily Wire YouTube channel. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and catch all our future videos right here on YouTube.